She never met Hubbard, right? He would have
No,
been
I don't think
dead when
Leah
she was
Remini ever.
young.
I don't think Leah Remini ever met Hubbard. He was, he was very scarce after 78, and after 75, he was very scarce, and he was in complete hiding after 1980. After 1980, there were basically only 2 or 3 people in the world that knew where he was and were spending time with him.
But when he was still alive, she was a kid in Scientology, right? At some point.
Let's see. I got to do the math.
Can we pull up when she's born?
She's 53 now, and so she was born in
71, maybe?
She was
70,
born in
71?
71, and she got into it when she was about 6 years old. So we figure she got into it when she was about 77.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was still around, but I don't think she would have seen him.
But does she remember how he was spoken about at that point? Because he's still alive, right? So he's like a living god or something. Like,
I've never
on that?
asked her about that. I mean, all Scientologists will tell you that he's not a god. We just hold him in very high esteem, but they worship the guy. They definitely worship the guy.
Okay. Now, she took 7 years, give or take, 6, 7 years after that 3-month period in 06, where they made her come in and spend $300,000 for the right to be brain tortured. Why did it? What was her process that took that much longer for her to leave?
She was concerned about what had happened to Shelly. She hadn't heard anything about Shelly. She kept asking Dave about that. She wasn't getting good answers. She was starting to threaten to go to the FBI against, to Dave.
While still in.
And there was just, I think she just reached a point where she's like, I'm out of here. And then she told a very few people, and then it got to me, and then I reported that she was out. So that was July 2013.
What was it like for her when she left, though? Because she's a public figure. They obviously know she left. Like, what did they do?
I think she was very nervous about it. I think she wasn't sure how much they were going to retaliate, but I think she was angry because a month later, in August 2013, is when she filed a missing person report on Shelly with the LAPD. This was huge. I mean,
yeah. Can you explain? Because she was later found, but recently, like they found her in the last year, right?
No, they didn't find her.
Oh, they didn't.
No, I mean,
All
look,
right, fill me in.
So Dave and Shelly were both messengers, those young helpers of L. Ron Hubbard, and they got married in I think 81, something like that. And they were around Hubbard, and so when Dave took over after Hubbard's death, she was, he eventually adopted the title COB, which stands for Chairman of the Board. So everybody in Scientology, they don't call him Miscavige, they call him COB. Shelly's title was literally COB assistant. Okay, so the two of them ran Scientology. Mostly they were at that int base east of Los Angeles that we were looking at before. They had some nice quarters there. And but after about 2002, 2003, when they started to get Tom Cruise really spun up again, and Dave was spending a lot of time with Tom Cruise, the relationship with Shelly started to get strained. And at some point in, I believe, late August, so then in 2005, what happened in 2005 was that Tom Cruise had his disastrous interview with Matt Lauer. He had his weird appearance on Oprah.
Oh, the couch.
At about the same time, in early 2005, Dave left the base to go to L.A. to work on this new project. They were going to republish all of L. Ron Hubbard's books. Mike Rinder was working on it in L.A. Dave came out to work on it. And the people that were there told me it was very unusual that Dave went to L.A. and Shelly stayed behind. They normally went everywhere together. That was the first sign that something was going on. Then Mike came back to the base on his own. Shelly cornered him. And he said she cornered him on a particular balcony on a particular building. And he said that was important because he knew it was one of the very few places on that entire base that wasn't on a cam. Okay? Oh. So he knew she was cornering him somewhere where they would really have some privacy. And Mike said that she said to him, "Oh, you were with Dave in L.A. Let me ask you, which color ring was he wearing?" Now they had bought these elaborate wedding rings that were like multiply colored, like there was rose gold and silver, whatever. And so she was asking him, did you happen to notice which of his rings he was wearing? Mike says to me, I know what she was really asking. She was really asking, was he wearing his wedding ring? And that's when Mike told me, that's when I knew there was something really going on, some problem. So Dave was on his own in LA, and Shelly was wondering about his wedding ring. So just a few weeks after that, in late August or early September 2005, I've never gotten the exact date. I've talked to people that were there though.
This is when Mike's in the hole now, right?
No, Mike's not in the hole yet. No, Mike's not in the hole till the next year.
Okay.
The hole is there, but Mike wasn't in it yet.
He wasn't in it. Okay.
Dave comes now. While Dave's gone, one of the things he was notorious for was there were certain things that never got done because you had to get his permission, and he would send it back a million times. And so there was like this, we call it an org board, and it's basically a jobs board. Who goes into what position? And they could never get it filled out. So while Dave was in LA, Shelly filled it out. Here, you work there, done. Everyone was so happy, right? The other thing that they did was they wanted to renovate the building that they were staying in, and so Shelly oversaw the crating up of all their possessions, get everything out of the way so they can work on the house. Dave comes back. He sees that the org board's been filled in without his permission. He sees that his belongings are all in boxes, and he blows his top. I've got multiple witnesses to this. He just has the mother of all temper tantrums. A week later, Shelly disappeared and has not been seen in 19 years.
I thought they did find her. I must have missed that. So she's never been seen since then.
There have been sightings. But I really do.
What do you mean a sighting? Because that would be seen.
Well, sightings meaning unconfirmed. Sighting. Okay, she's been
like
seen. She's been seen. Well, let me explain what I think happened. Okay, that base we're talking about, Int Base or Gold Base, where the hole is, 500-acre massive complex in San Jacinto, east of Los Angeles. There's a smaller base up in the mountains above there called CST, Church of Spiritual Technology. That's the most secret subsidiary of Scientology. CST is the very secretive group that operates the vaults. Do you know about the vaults?
No.
They have vaults. They have 4 vaults. One there in the CST headquarters near Lake Arrowhead. There's one farther up Northern California in the what you call it, Gold Country. There's a mine, and then way extreme Northern California, a place called Petrolia, and a 4th vault in New Mexico. And it's basically an underground vault where they can store L. Ron Hubbard's writings and lectures so that when there's civilization collapse, Scientology can get things going again.
Oh, that's what we'll find?
Yes,
oh my
right,
God. Pray for that civilization.
So there's one organization that's their whole job, CST, archiving L. Ron Hubbard's things. I believe Dave, for whatever reason, was done with her and had her shipped up to the CST headquarters near Lake Arrowhead, and she's been there ever since. Now, what you might
be... As a prisoner.
Basically as a prisoner.
Not dead.
No, I don't think she's dead. I think we'd find out if she was dead.
Well, how would we find out if there's no body, no crime?
No, but there would be records. And I think about...
why would there be records if she's never been recovered?
There are public records putting her there. Okay. And if she dies, it will become public eventually. It may take a little while. A parallel, they had a woman, Pat, remember Pat Broker? We talked about him. His wife was Annie Broker. Her name was Annie Tidman. She eventually was kind of put away and died. And it took...
Put away?
They hid her away in an apartment while she was dying of cancer.
Oh.
She died, and then it took a while before her family heard about it. Her family then told me, and then I was able to write a story about it. It was about 6 months between the time she died and the time I was able to write a story about it. I think something like that would happen with Shelly. I think we would hear something if she had died. But anyway, you may have seen the news that recently there was a record of her getting a new driver's license and voting record up at the Petrolia location in Northern California. I think she was there for a short time and had her driver's license renewed, but I think most likely she's still where she's been the whole time, which is the CST headquarters near Lake Arrowhead. It's the most secure place for them to be able to put her. She actually has work that she can do there, and I think he's going to keep her there till she dies.
All right, let's read this. So the article here is, what's the story with that place, the underground Scientology vault near Petrolia? There's a picture on the screen. Can you zoom in on that for 1 second, Les, just for people out there?
That's the vault near Petrolia I'm talking about, and that's the one where recently a voter's record showed up for Shelly. I do believe she was there for a short time. I doubt that she's still there.
Tony, what am I looking at there?
So that's the vault entrance. So that strangely looking triangular pentagonal building is actually the entrance to the vault. The vault goes back underneath the ground there. It probably doesn't go too far, a couple hundred feet. And it's basically what they do is they get a big giant corrugated metal pipe and bury it and then build inside of it.
Like rooms, like holes, if you will?
All it is a storage room for L. Ron Hubbard's bullshit.
And fucking Shelly's just back there in the storage room.
No, there's other buildings around there. She would be staying in a house nearby. She would not be in the vault.
Not in the vault. Well, how nice of them. They let her see some daylight.
Yes.
Okay, so there's
up the road a little ways or a mile or so, there's a very nice house. She was probably staying there for a while. Like I said, I doubt that she's still there because there's only 2 people up there.
What is that? What's that Venn diagram?
Right. So that's the symbol for CST, that particular subsidiary that runs those vaults. There's only one person who ever worked for CST that came out and spoke about it. His name is Dylan Gill. I interviewed him 12 years ago, and I've interviewed him since then. I asked him about that, and it's interesting. He initially said to me, they do that so that when L. Ron Hubbard returns to Earth, he'll be able to see that.
Oh, no.
I printed that, and then he was like, Tony, that's not true. I didn't say that. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you, Dylan. I think you did. So I don't know. But that's definitely the logo of the organization that runs those vaults.
All right, go up, Alessia. I just want to read the beginning of this. Just pause that for a sec. Go up. All right, so if you were driving along the Lost Coast a few miles northwest of Petrolia, you might notice an old farm road leading east up a ravine. If you were somehow able to get past the locked cattle gate and follow that farm road through the cow pastures, then up a private road that traces the hill's spine, you'd soon come to a massive symbol carved into the earth. You probably wouldn't even notice its ridges and depressions from ground level. They've eroded quite a bit since a local contractor carved them nearly 30 years ago. But from directly above the perspective of a drone or a Google satellite, you can still see the design. 2 interlocking circles, each more than 500 feet in diameter, with diamonds in the middle. And then that's the picture we were just showing you how it looked. This is the logo for the Church of Spiritual Technology, an arm of Scientology, that's CST like you were saying, created in the early 1980s after the IRS revoked the group's tax-exempt status. It took an all-out war with the IRS for Scientology to regain tax-exempt status, which it finally did in 1993. The CST, an especially secretive branch of the notoriously insular organization, was founded to preserve the life's work of Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. Just east of the 1,000-foot logo, there's a helipad, and beyond that, an 8,000-square-foot residence called the LRH House,
yep.
Built in 1991, which where Shelly may be, as a place for Hubbard to grow up after being reborn in a new body. Scientists believe that Scientologists believe, not scientists, that Hubbard didn't die of a stroke in 1986 at the age of 74, but rather
voluntarily left his body. That's right. Yeah.
Voluntarily discarded his body so he could continue his spiritual research outside of its confines.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
I know. It's amazing. So there have been some sightings. A man named Mitch Brisker definitely saw Shelly. And let's see, that would have been, I think, 2008, he thinks it was. So a few years after she first disappeared, she was with some people. I have spoken to a woman near that CST base in Lake Arrowhead who believes she saw Shelly in a store with a couple of handlers in 2015, 2016. But other than that, nothing confirmed. And but now we get this tantalizing clue of the voter record up at Petrolia. And so there's no question she was there at some point. But I think she's probably back at CST in near Lake Arrowhead. But, whenever Scientology's put on, basically what's going on is Dave became paranoid about his own wife and decided to just put her away and banish her until she dies. And when you ask Scientology about it, they say, oh, she's on a special work project.
A special work project.
Yeah.
That sounds
and
like...
she doesn't want to speak publicly. But why can't she see her own family? It's terrible.
Is there like a right to privacy and free speech thing? Seriously, with that, where like the feds can't go and say, show us where your wife is, because she has a right to privacy, I guess. Right?
The police can go in for a welfare check, but they have been so cowed by Scientology. At one point, when Leah Remini filed her missing person report in 2013, we found out later, thanks to the reporting of Yashar Ali, that the LAPD did meet with Shelly because of Leah's report. They met down the mountain in a coffee shop in Covina, and she was with Dave's attorney. And then there was a strange problem with their fingerprints. Their fingerprints turned out not to be a match. Some people, say that they obviously brought a different woman. No, I think they did.
Did they
bring
have a
Shelly.
criminal record of her for her fingerprints?
She has no criminal record. But
so how would they even know?
They had it from a driver's license. California, you have to give a.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But I just think it was they were too hasty on taking the fingerprint. It's just a bad fingerprint. But I think it was her. But it was just surprising new information that came out about a year and a half ago. But I still really believe that she's alive and she's at CST, probably at the headquarters in Lake Arrowhead. She definitely was up at the one at Petrolia. But this is amazing that the leader of this multinational, multi-billion organization can get away with just banishing his own wife.
Well, you had mentioned that Leah said at the wedding she saw Dave playing footsie with his assistant or whatever.
Right.
But is there, that's a long time ago now. Is there evidence in the meantime that over the last decade and a half he's been fucking like a porn star or anything like that?
The only thing I have is that in 2017, Mitch Brisker says that Mitch Brisker was like the film director for Scientology. He made all their movies for a while.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'd never admit that out loud.
Yeah.
But okay.
And he came out recently. He's told some very interesting stories. He came out with a book. I wrote about his book. Very good. And he says that in 2017, they were going to fly over to England for that event I've been talking about, the IS. Mm-hmm. And he was invited, do you want to go on the plane with us? Private plane would be a lot more, convenient. He said, okay. So he got on a private plane and they flew from LA over to England. And he said that Dave and Lou, his communicator, were in the private cabin with the door closed overnight. So, and he has pointed out that's a violation of Sea Org rules for David Miscavige to be in a private room overnight with a woman that's not his wife.
So they do have rules on that?
I'm not saying anything. I'm not going to try to be the moral police here. But Mitch Brisker is saying that is a violation of Sea Org rules.
So they have like some similar adultery type.
But this idea that Dave and Lou are an item certainly is bolstered by this 2017 event that Mitch Brisker saw, and that's 12 years after Shelly's disappearance. Now it's 7 years ago. I don't know if it's still the case now, but I mean that does suggest that part of the reason that he got rid of Shelly was he wanted to be with somebody else.
Have you ever talked in any way or had any form of communication with David Miscavige at any point in your time reporting? Like, have you ever been in a room with him?
No. He's only given 4 interviews ever since 1986. He was live on Nightline with Ted Koppel in 1992. He gave a more canned interview with NBC a couple years later. Some of that showed up in Going Clear. He gave a print interview. We just learned this a couple weeks ago. He gave a print interview to an Austrian news weekly in 1994. And then he gave a print interview to the Tampa Bay Times in 1998. And that's it. He doesn't let reporters anywhere near him. And I send requests for comment to the one media person who's ever responded to me ever, but hasn't in years. I always send requests for comment there, and I get nothing back.
Can we pull up that Ted Koppel one? You said the second one was the one where he was more canned. The
Right.
first one
The
with
first
Ted
one was live with Ted Koppel on Nightline. It was kind of a disaster for him, so he's never done that again.
Ted Koppel.
David Miscavige. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Let's pull this up
yeah.
for a second. Play it. All right. Here we go.
They did some canned pieces about what Scientology is.
The script tells the evaluators to sell hard. The more resistive, meaning resistant or argumentative he is, the...
In fact, when we come back, we'll be bringing you part 2 of Forrest Sawyer's report and the first...
Here we go.
What exactly does the Church of Scientology believe, and what can happen to those who criticize those beliefs? Once again, here's Nightline correspondent Forrest Sawyer.
I've slept with
he was really upset about these canned pieces.
Hunted with
Here's L. Ron Hubbard
pygmies in the Philippines. As a matter of fact, I have studied 21 different primitive races, including the white race.
Scientology's founder was a man with an imagination. L. Ron Hubbard wrote pulp science fiction for a penny a word, and critics claim manufactured his own life history as well. He called himself an explorer and a war hero, the man who discovered the keys to the universe and used them to heal his own war injuries. Critics say Hubbard's claims were so fanciful that one California Superior Court judge declared Hubbard to be, quote, virtually a pathological liar.
These are a bunch of people who never caused anything in their lives to begin with.
This is a guy that has spent like a dozen years in the hole, and nobody. He's going to die in at the base.
Has never been seen before. And
he's still in.
In 1950, Hubbard turned away from pulp novels with a new book that would change everything.
Do we have the? I thought I saw David Miscavige coming on. Do we know where that is?
Yeah, just scroll forward.
Yeah, scroll forward, LS.
Get past the packages, and you'll get to.
Well, use your scroll on the actual video.
No, on the video. Just move it forward.
Yeah. Let's see where this is. No, like use your scroller. Use the. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. All right, keep looking.
Well, I'm just saying, look at the chapters. And go to the chapters here.
All right, do we see him?
Get it forward.
Yeah, grab L.
There we go.
Joining us live tonight is David Miscavige, whose formal title is Chairman of the Board of the Religious Technology Center, the organization which manages Dianetics and Scientology.
He is
Mr. Miscavige took
32
over as
here.
the head of Scientology in 1987 following the death of the church's founder, L. Ron Hubbard. You've been sitting here very patiently for the first 15 minutes. It's your turn. We're going to take a short segment here to talk, and then we'll take a break, and then we've got the rest of the program to talk. Where would you like to pick up on what many in our audience, I suspect, have seen for the first time about the Church of Scientology?
Yeah, well, I think, I guess the first thing I would like to take up is the fact of the intro piece. There's no question that there's some controversy surrounding Scientology, but if you want to look at what the real controversy is, there's been stories like this one that we saw here for the past 40 years, and yet during that time period, Scientology has continued to grow. In fact, it's 25 times larger today than it was in 1980. I would just like to take up a few of the falsehoods that are in there, because I think this explains a lot why you have the controversy. I don't know that Scientology lends itself so well to the press. In this instance, we did agree that we would have your correspondents come in, and in fact, he did have unlimited access to the church. But then you get a piece like this. For instance, something that isn't mentioned in there is that every single detractor on there is part of a religious hate group called Cult Awareness Network, and their sister group called American Family Foundation.
Yeah, see, he goes after the exactly. He goes after this is what Hubbard instructed them to do, is to go after the messenger rather than the message.
Talk about the Jews, you would get a similar result to what you have here. The thing I find disingenuous is that it's not commented upon, and yet, in fact, your correspondent Forrest and Deanna Lee were aware of this fact. And not only that, that is the source of where they received these people to talk to. They didn't find them randomly.
If I may just interrupt for a moment, you realize there's a little bit of a problem in getting people to talk critically about the Church of Scientology, because quite frankly, they're scared.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Let me explain something to you. The most disingenuous thing is that you have those people. Now, let's not give the American public the wrong impression that these are people that randomly were pulled in from around the world and that they decide to talk against Scientology. Those people aren't scared, and they've been loudly speaking in the press. You showed me a book you had before this show that has many detractors. Same ones. So they're not really frightened. That's a good story.
Actually, that was the book. It was a collection of articles that has been written about you
the same
and the
people
church.
quoted.
No, what I was saying is the reason, perhaps, that we only hear from those folks is that there are a lot of other people who might be considered detractors of the church, and they, who do not belong to any organization, are quite frankly afraid to come out and speak.
Well, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. That story doesn't hold water because I'll tell you, from my perspective, the person getting harassed is myself and the church. Let me give you an example.
And they always say
we
that
did
they're the
make
victims.
access possible for Forrest. That isn't to say that he took advantage of it, Ted. For instance, the subject of money comes up. It comes up routinely, and I'm sure we might bring it up later on this show. But I, in fact, had the highest contributors of Scientology gathered up so that Forrest could interview them to ask them why they gave money to the church and how much they had. And believe me, it's larger figures than these people are talking about. He told me he didn't have time. I said, please, I mean, they're here. He said, no, I don't have time. I don't want to see them. I offered for him to go down to our church headquarters in Clearwater, Florida, where 2,000 parishioners are there at any given time from all over the world. In other words, he would get a cross-selection, people from Germany, England, California, Florida, Spain, Italy, you name it. Didn't want to go, didn't have time. So to represent also that this is what the church puts forth isn't so, here's what I find wrong, and here's what I find the common mistake the media makes. I can get you 100,000 Scientologists who will say unbelievably positive things about their church to every one you had on there. And I not only am upset about those people not being interviewed, they are too. And the funny thing about it, and why you find us not really being that willing to speak to the media, is because not just myself, any Scientologist will open up a paper, will watch this program. They're probably laughing right now, saying that isn't Scientology. That's what makes media. Media is controversy. I understand that. And if you really looked at the big picture of what's happening in Scientology, it isn't really controversial, certainly to a Scientologist.
We're going to have to take a break.
Very good.
Okay, all right, let's pause it right there. It's interesting to see the psychology of him and how he rolls, but also like that's why Koppel is a genius. Like he really kind of let him show his own ass there. But it you know, when you use numbers like that right away on a church that we know isn't more than 20, 40,000 people, and you're like, every 100,000, there's only one that's going to complain, and yet constantly, even under fear, there's people who are coming out that would complain, even back then, right? And to totally deny that there's any sort of repercussions when people could see that there's repercussions for people leaving. The balls it takes to like sit there and do that is immense. And also, is he like a heavy smoker?
Oh yeah, they all are. That's one of the things about being in the Sea Org is you got to smoke a lot.
Really?
Yeah,
that's like a thing.
See, they're all trying to emulate Hubbard. They're all trying to be swaggering naval officers, smoking like chimneys, and screaming at each other, and there's a whole Hubbard. They all try to become Hubbard basically. So smoking's a big part of it. Yeah.
Tom Cruise don't smoke though.
He's not Sea Org.
But he's Tom Cruise.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's a very important ornament for Scientology, but he doesn't run things. That's the other thing I see. I often see people saying that they're grooming him to be like, take over. No, he's not. The only people who can run Scientology is the captain of the Sea Org. Right now, David Miscavige is the captain of the Sea Org, and they will only replace him with somebody that's in the Sea Org. Tom Cruise is not in the Sea Org. He's never going to be in the Sea Org.
And the Sea Org isn't again. It's not like sitting on the ship, on like the Hubbard ship, but that's what they call it.
They still call it the Sea Organization. They still wear naval uniforms, but they're no longer at sea.
They wear naval uniforms. Oh my God. When he uses terms like parishioners and shit too, it's just, it's so funny. But you had done a whole story with Lisa Marie Presley, who's now passed on.
Right.
And I want you to explain the whole background there in a second, but what was very interesting to me and telling was that when you found out from her when she was a child and her mother joined, they treated the mother well and they didn't really care about her until they realized she was friends with Michael Jackson, and they wanted to try to get to Michael Jackson.
Right, right. Yeah, that's what she told me. I had lengthy conversations with her in 2015. I had spotted in some music she put out in 2012 that it seemed to have some lyrics that were directed at the Church of Scientology, and I thought, wow, maybe Lisa Marie is on her way out, because this album has multiple songs that seem to suggest that. And then in 2015, I actually got to talk to her, and she said, yes, you were right about that. I was on my way out. But in October 2014, she had tried to have this big showdown with David Miscavige, because she really didn't like the way Dave was treating his own dad, Ron Sr., who had left and was not being allowed to see his daughters. And so Lisa Marie wanted to talk to David Miscavige about that. She went down to the Flag Land base in October 2014. He refused to see her. He sent his sisters in to yell at her. She described the whole thing to me. It sounded awful. And so she went back to the hotel and she said, Tony, I told everybody in the family, I'm out. And when we were speaking in 2015, Lisa made it real clear that she had taken Priscilla and Riley out with her. She said, you guys got to come out with me. And so at that point, that was the situation. Mike Rinder also spoke to Lisa in this period. After the attempted showdown, Lisa and Riley went to this house in Nashville they were renting and called Mike. And Mike has described that phone call to me. He said, yeah, I was talking to Lisa about the same thing she talked to you about, this showdown she tried to have with Miscavige. And then at some point, she put Riley on the phone. And Mike said, I'd never talked to Riley Keough in my life. And Lisa puts her on the phone, and Mike said, Riley Keough said to him, you need to take these motherfuckers down.
Whoa.
So there's no question, and at least at that time, in 2014, 2015, Lisa was out, Riley was out, and she said Priscilla was out as well. Now, since then, I never heard from Lisa Marie again after a second phone call in 2015, and Ron Miscavige stopped hearing from her. She went through that terrible battle with Michael Lockwood over their kids. There were reports that she might have gone back to substance abuse. It was a really rough time she was having. We weren't sure whether what was going on with her. And then in 2021, I reported that Riley showed up on Instagram with some photos with some Scientologist friends. So that made us wonder. And then Priscilla has really seemed to, especially in the recent months, she I think in February, she visited with Gottfried Helmwein, the famous Austrian artist. His stuff. He did the album covers for Rammstein. And
Is he in Scientology?
Yeah, he's been in Scientology since the 70s. Okay.
Wow.
Big time Scientologist. And she was hanging out with him at his show at a museum in Vienna. And then, they did that movie about her last fall, Priscilla, that was directed by Sofia Coppola. And,
Really?
Yeah. And Sofia and Priscilla sat down and did an interview, talked about the movie, and a little footage to help promote the movie. And if you look closely at that footage, she's wearing what appears to be a Scientology cross. And this is just a few months ago. So
Can we find this? Sofia Coppola
I put it on my story.
and Priscilla? Type in Sofia Coppola and Priscilla Presley interview.
Yeah.
Let's see what that does. So I forgot they have.
So
like
that
their own
suggests
cross.
that maybe Priscilla's back in at this point. And anyway, Lisa tragically died in January 2023. I had never gotten to talk to her again, but I did have my notes from those interviews, and so I wrote the story about. She told me about her involvement in Scientology. She told me about how much she loved Michael Jackson and that it was Scientology that forced her to divorce him.
Because he wouldn't. Got it.
Yeah, and just a lot of really interesting things. No, that's not it. No,
It's a lot of plastic.
no, it's Priscilla and Sophia.
Yeah, I think it was pulling up some of the other. All right.
It's just the two of them. It's Priscilla and that's Sophia. Yeah, that's maybe no, that's not it. That's not the one though.
That one's on Hollywood Reporter.
There's footage they did together, the two of them. Shoot.
I guess Scientology couldn't save her from a bad
well,
plastic
play
surgery.
that one and see. That doesn't look familiar, but I don't think that's the one.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see a cross there.
Yeah.
Right?
There's another one that they did.
Interessante.
Maybe it's not on YouTube.
Might not be. That's fine. But either way, so you spotted this, and it could be
you
that
can
she's
see it.
in.
Yeah, and it looks like Scientology cross she's wearing. That's just a couple months ago, or in the last year. So anyway, but yeah, I was very fortunate that Lisa told me as much as she did about David Miscavige, about Michael Jackson, about Scientology. Really interesting stuff, and that's at my Substack if you want to take a look at that.
Okay. And we had gotten off it earlier. We went, I think we went down the rabbit hole with David Miscavige when we started talking about his father, Ron, and how he left in 2012. And Ron just recently passed away in the last couple of years. But when his father left, Ron went on a public crusade to out Scientology. And obviously, like, they had no more relationship. What was... did you have an opportunity to talk with Ron a bunch? Like,
yeah.
What do you think? I think you said earlier, like, he just couldn't take it anymore and he left. But like, what was going through his mind knowing that his son still ran it? Like, it is his son.
Yeah. No, it was tough for him. And I first learned that Ron Miscavige Sr. had escaped from Scientology the same week the news broke that Tom and Katie had split up. That was some crazy week, man. That was 2012. And then I started to hear from Ron personally, privately, about a year after that. We started talking, but he didn't want to say anything publicly until his book came out. And then his book came out, and then he went on a media tour and everything. And then we could talk openly about things. But one of the most fascinating things that happened, of course, when Ron Miscavige escapes.
I mean, how did he escape?
That was, remember I said he and his wife were sending out birthday presents?
Oh, that's right. That was them. Yes.
They mailed birthday presents, and then they drove out. He knew that the guards would assume he was on some mission for Scientology, and they just got in the car and drove away. But then he was subjected to surveillance. And this is a really great story, is that... remember I told you about those guys that their job was to follow Pat Broker and so that Pat Broker never knew it. Well, David Miscavige did the same thing with his dad. He put this father-son private investigator duo on his own dad, and their mission was to follow Ron Miscavige, report on everything he was doing to Dave, but don't let Ron know he's being followed. Like I said, they do have investigations they call noisy investigations where they want you to know you're being followed. But their instructions were strict. Do not let Ron know he's being followed. So they attached a homing device on his car so they could just trail him wherever he drove.
That's illegal, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It depends on the state. It was in Wisconsin. He was living in Wisconsin at the time. He would go to a local restaurant. They'd sit a few booths over and try to eavesdrop on him. And they were keeping tabs on him. Then one day, Ron was coming out, I think, of Walmart. And he was walking across the parking lot. At that point, I think he was 77, around there. And these guys are watching from a distance with binoculars and stuff. And all of a sudden, Ron's doing this. He's grabbing his chest, right? They think he's having a heart attack right there in the middle of the parking lot. Well, he was trying to find his phone, right? So they feel like they have a dilemma. They're not supposed to let anybody know what they're doing, but he's dying. So they call their handler in Florida and say, we need to talk to Miscavige. What do we do? And so they patched him through to David Miscavige and asked him, sir, what do we do? And they claim David Miscavige's exact words were, if he dies, he dies.
Oh.
Now, the reason we know all this was that a little while later, they were hanging out in the neighborhood to watch Ron, and they looked suspicious, these two guys in their SUV or whatever. And so some neighbor called a cop, and a cop came over to check them out. What are you guys doing? Looked in the car, an arsenal of weapons. Okay? And Now, look, this is the United States of America. It's not that unusual in Wisconsin for guys to have some guns in their car. But when they looked at it a little more carefully, they realized they had a homemade silencer for a rifle.
Oh,
That's a federal offense.
that's 10 years in prison,
10
right?
years in prison. Exactly.
Really?
That's what he was facing. Yeah.
No shit.
So now they're in big trouble. And that's why Dwayne and Daniel Powell spilled their guts to a cop. It's all on tape. It's all been I'll talk about how
Do we have that tape?
we do, and I'm going to tell you how in a minute. So Dwayne and Daniel Powell spilled their guts about, oh, yeah, we're being paid $10,000 a week. We have to follow Ron Miscavige. We have to report to David Miscavige. He's the leader of Scientology. This is his father. He wants him followed. I mean, they just lay it all out, right? And Dwayne Powell's facing 10 years in prison for having that silencer. So that's all sitting in a police report. I don't know, 6 months later, it's on the front page of the LA Times. Who do you think made that happen? Lisa Marie Presley.
Oh shit, that was her?
Yes.
How did she make it happen?
She heard about it from Ron because Ron was told about it. She called Rinder. Rinder gave her advice. She hired an attorney to get the police material, get the police report, and got it sent to the LA Times. The LA Times wrote their story. I later got the actual tapes and published the actual tapes so you can hear the Powells spilling their guts on my website. And it's all thanks to Lisa Marie Presley. She was going. There we go. Audio, right?
All right, let's play this real quick. We just had okay. There's a video right here.
I hope the audio's still there. There we go. Yeah, they're on
All
YouTube.
right,
I put them on YouTube.
Play the first one.
I put them on YouTube.
No,
but
no, not
it's
that
just
one.
audio.
The one above it.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah, you can see the cop there holding the silencer.
All right, let's turn this on and see what it is. Do you know where we should play this in there?
No, it's been 20 years.
Talking to your father. Basically, he's working this case you guys are working on. And in doing so, ended up prowling.
Look at the size of that.
He gets arrested. We've been talking. He's laid out a lot of details to us about what he's doing, why, for who.
He's not laying any details out about anything he's doing, for who, or why. Confidentiality agreement, he breaks that confidentiality agreement, we get sued. I'm not going to give you any details on that either.
That's the son.
Oh.
Well, we can go get...
He's like, well, Dad just did.
And he'll explain to you what he's told us. And I want to talk to my dad.
Well, first of all, slow yourself down. You're not calling shit here, okay? Well, here's the thing. You're not just going to walk in here and get information and walk away happy. That's not how it works.
This is Wisconsin.
Okay? Yes,
right.
we know what your dad is working on.
Who's he working for?
Church of Scientology through another private investigation firm who was retained by an attorney who was retained by David.
Okay, well, why can't I talk to him? I've been worried about my dad all day. That's why I'm so upset.
We're in the midst of explaining that to you, okay? But your dad's got a bunch of crap in his car that shouldn't have been in his car as well, okay? And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
What?
Well, these are things that we're going to talk about.
Anyway.
Okay.
All right,
But
let's
these
pause
are
it.
things
Yeah,
that-
so this is we'll put that link in
They're
the
very,
description.
very
This is
nervous.
54 minutes right there.
They're
of the
very,
full
very
thing.
nervous. They're in
Yeah.
a very bad position. And so they end up spilling their guts. And they like I said, they tell the whole thing. Yeah, we're getting paid $10,000 a week to follow Ron Miscavige, paid by his dad. I mean, it was
$10,000 a week. I might take this
Yeah.
job. I don't know.
It was such a major hit, and it was such a clean. See, and what I loved about Lisa Marie's genius was, I think she knew that the LA Times at one time had been the best paper for covering Scientology. In the 90s, they were the best. They were uncovering incredible stuff. But by this time, by 2013, the LA Times seemed less interested, and they weren't doing too much. And so to give it to them, to break that major story, genius. I thought Lisa Marie Presley was such a nightmare for David Miscavige at that point. But I think that this arrest happened in 2013. I think it came out. The story came out in 2015.
So why isn't there some sort of conspiracy type charge there, given that David hired private investigators carrying illegal weapons to track his father within range, with the connotation that perhaps they would at some point be shooting to kill?
Dude, there was a laptop they seized that would have had all of Scientology's secret undercover private investigator operations on it. I tried to get that disc that, it's such a...
Wait, they seized it off these guys?
Yeah.
So they have that.
They had that, and they downloaded all the data from it, and it's been a few years. It's hard for me to explain exactly what happened, but Scientology was so devious in the way they made sure that none of that information got out public. It was so infuriating. They had a cop lying. They had a PI, an attorney lying to a judge, and they managed to get it all hidden. But this was an incredible moment where a small Wisconsin police department had Scientology by the short hairs.
And somehow they got away.
That's
mysterious.
No,
I
I wrote a whole story about that somewhere else. I have to review that story. It's been so long, but I remember it was so infuriating, and it definitely involved an attorney lying to a court and risking being disbarred by the way he lied to the court in order to get that material buried. And there was still a small chance we might be able to get that material, but it just didn't work out. And I tried to get Ron to help me, and I think Ron by that time was kind of tired of all the stuff he'd been through. It was really difficult. But yeah, amazing moment. And I just wanted people to know that we only know about that case. We only know hear that audio. We only know that Ron Miscavige was being followed by these guys thanks to Lisa Marie Presley.
Again, like, David is still Ron's son. Was there, in the 10 years or so before he died that he was out and trying to do something about this, did he have empathy for the idea that, like, he got his son into it when he was young and so he doesn't know any better?
Oh, he talked about that all the time. He talked about how bad he felt that he got Dave into Scientology, and that he really felt that Dave was a good boy, and it was sad to see him turn out so bad, but that he had, no question that now he was this ruthless leader that was, kind of soulless, and to a certain extent, Ron blamed himself. It was kind of sad. Yeah.
It's it's like a real American tragedy right there to see that. You get sucked into a cult, you pull the family in, you're old when you finally realize it, you don't have much time left, and then your son's like the head of it.
Oh, and when Ron got out, David Miscavige made sure that the retaliation against him was some of the worst I've ever seen. I mean, they just threw everything at him. They made all these terrible accusations about him, and
like what?
That there was this. Okay, for example, he for a Halloween he'd put on some kind of a stupid Nazi guard uniform or something. Oh. So they made sure put that out and everything. I mean, just stupid stuff. And there was an accusation that there was a woman that, well, first of all, that he had beat his wife. Right, which Ron talked about in the book. Said, look, it was a different time in the 50s, and I got rough with my wife, and I shouldn't have, and it's a shortcoming of mine.
That's a bad start.
So but I'm just saying that they just went after him so hard all the time.
All right, so they had some legit stuff though. Okay, all right. Well, I still think no matter what, and he died while his son's still in charge, and probably never going to get out. That is certainly very tragic, and I guess he was in young, but it's wild to me how many, obviously that's like the head of the whole thing, but it's wild to me how many stories there are, and Mark Bunker outlined a lot of them when he was here, where it is the family's in, and they get ripped apart when one decides to leave and the others don't. I think you mentioned it with Mike Rinder. His 4 kids are still in there.
His two adult children are still in.
Right, now he has 4 new.
But
right,
he has
right,
two.
right.
He has a new family.
Right. And have you ever talked with his 2 adult children?
No.
They would never talk to you, right?
No.
But that's so their dad. Did they know their dad was in the hole for a long time?
Oh, that's a good question. Did Taryn and Benjamin know that Mike was in the hole? I doubt it. Because, you just look. They were all lifers. You don't see your other, your parent or your sibling, and you just figure they're on an assignment somewhere. I don't think they would have been told he was in the hole. Mike might say differently, but I don't think his kids knew that he was in the hole at the time.
But they know now because you wrote about it.
Well, I mean, now they're still the information they're given is so shielded. I don't know how much they know.
Are they in the Sea Org?
I'm pretty sure Benjamin is. I'm not sure if Taryn is.
So if he's not, though, he lives among us like a normal person. He can type into Google, right?
I mean, they use those 2 kids to attack him, and she's made lots of videos and she's appeared at places. I mean, she's clearly on a program to try to destroy him. So,
do we have videos of her talking about her father?
Probably, if you type in Taryn
Taryn
Taryn Rinder.
Taryn Rinder.
Teutsch, Teutsch is her last name.
Oh, so she married somebody.
I guess.
Okay. So Taryn talking about Mike Rinder. So is this like through official Scientology videos or like out in media?
No, official Scientology videos.
All right. Are we finding
POW
anything?
videos, I call them.
POW videos?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. I'm going to start calling them that too.
Yeah.
So they don't... That's so... But... Like, could you imagine your dad, like, has cancer, and you're like, no, I don't talk to him anymore.
Right.
Like, there's some things in life where it's like...
TARYN.
It's bigger.
TEUTSCH.
Would it be on YouTube?
Maybe.
Because that other one was on Vimeo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, while Alessi's trying to pull that up, like, there's some things in life that are just simply bigger, and you would think you're, like, going to forgive certain things. All right, here we go. Let's play it.
I firstly wanted to thank my hundreds of supporters who have written in, responding to my Facebook and my blog and my videos, because I really appreciate the support, because it's the people that are going to make a difference, and all of us actually making Disney listen up and do the right thing and fire Mike Rinder is going to make, your support really helps me. So thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, Disney need to fire Mike Rinder?
Well, because the Leah Remini series was on A&E, which was owned by Disney or something like that. Yeah.
I'm sure that convinced them right there.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were out right when you heard that. So you were in the Alex Gibney Going Clear documentary, though.
Yeah.
What made Alex want to cover that story so badly? He did an amazing job. He's a great documentarian, but what drew
Alex
him to
Gibney and Lawrence Wright had already done something previously. Lawrence Wright had an incredible book kind of explaining the background to Osama bin Laden and
Looming Tower.
Yep. And Lawrence Wright and Alex Gibney had collaborated on something about that.
Yes.
Alex is one of the best documentary makers in the world. And so when he came out, when the book Going Clear came out in 2013, they decided to do something together on that too. And I don't know, I'm so lucky they asked me to come on and interview me about some of the things. And they allowed me to, I got to tell about 2 things mainly. The IRS thing about getting tax exempt status, and Tom Cruise. They used me to kind of introduce Tom Cruise and what. And they told us they were filming it in like April or May 2014, and then they were telling us it's going to come out at Sundance. I was like, oh, I'd like to go to Sundance. They said, well, if you can get yourself there, you get to go. I was, oh, okay. So I paid for my flight,
That's all right.
And that's all right. And went to Sundance, and they had to put it in the biggest venue because there was so much demand. People wanted to be at the premiere. And there were, people like Alec Baldwin was there, and there were several.
Anti-Scientologist Alec Baldwin. Let's go. All right.
Anyway, big crowd, and I didn't know what to expect. They asked me to give a few interviews on the red carpet and stuff. I was like, I figured I'm in there for 30 seconds, and then I was in a lot more than I expected. I was surprised. It was kind of thrilling. But really, it's really more about the Scientologists that have come forward. Jason Begay and Spanky Taylor, and of course Mike Rinder.
Spanky Taylor was the assistant for
Travolta,
right? Okay.
And so it was an emotional night. It was something else to see that film, and Alex had done such a great job with it. So yeah, I was thrilled to be a part of it, and I just like the fact that I got to introduce Tom Cruise.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And like obviously you've covered that for a while. And when we had Mark in here, Mark was the guy who leaked those videos back in what, like
2008.
Yeah.
Yep.
And which are just incredible
videos
to watch.
Yeah.
But is there, I've always kind of wondered this. I think our mind goes here with a lot of these things. It doesn't mean it's what it is. But whenever I look at cults, and you've seen so many of them that kind of go this way, is there like any weird sexual innuendo to Scientology itself? Like, is there any form of like sex cult within it?
That's what's interesting is that, look, it's based in California and Florida. It's kind of out of the 60s and 70s. And so I think a lot of people sort of automatically assume it's some kind of a hippie free love kind of thing. Julian, it's a business cult. Their fetish is business rules. They're obsessed with business administration. It's the most. I don't understand how people don't die of boredom in Scientology. I mean, you're reading all this crap, you're doing these exercises that are mindless, and they're obsessed with the absolute best way to run a business. There's and they're very uptight. Now, you talk to some Scientologists, they'll say, yeah, definitely in the 70s, there were a lot of people hooking up, and it was, part of the counterculture. But today, no. It's very, very conservative. It's a fundamentalist religion. It's a fundamentalist group. You're giving
them too much credit.
So
keep going though.
No, but they and people get married very young in the Sea Org because one of the reasons is that people they supposedly are not bringing in 12, 13, 14-year-olds anymore. Now it's
that's who was around Hubbard, right?
Now it's 18-year-olds. Well, I've seen some 16, 17-year-olds, but they're pretty young. And you go into the Sea Org and you're assigned a room that's got sets of bunk beds, and you got like 6 guys in a room with one bathroom, right? Yeah, imagine, and that's day after day after day after day after day. There's no privacy. It's just awful. They get married at 18 because then at least a married couple gets their own room. They might have to share. It might be an apartment with 4 other couples. You're still sharing, but at least you get a private room with your wife. So that's why they get married very, very young, because the alternative is just awful.
That's like a strange reason, like the way they set that up.
But they want them married.
They don't want them having kids.
But not having kids.
So they're handing out condoms at the door. And birth control pills.
Don't you dare! If you get her pregnant, you guys are both being shipped off to Siberia.
They're like that about it.
Yeah,
they'll put you in the hole with your.
Well,
kid.
They've been forcing women to have abortions for decades.
What?
Yeah. No, this has been well established. Women are coerced into having abortions. And multiple women have come forward. Claire Headley was forced to have 2 of them.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And they've talked about this publicly. Not only are there no kids, but when the women get pregnant, they are under incredible pressure to have abortions. I know.
I've never heard, actually, let's speak their language and say from a business perspective, this makes no sense. Don't you want, right. And hey, I'm happy they're not bringing, I'm not happy to hear they're forcing abortions and all. That's horrible. But I guess the next generation, they're not crazy about bringing into it. I guess that's a win for people. But That's how you
It's-
don't survive.
You're right. You're exactly right. But they've got this mentality in the Sea Org that they're racing to save the planet, and the way they're racing to save the planet is by bringing these people in to do their bridge, to do their auditing, to follow all these rules Hubbard set down, and it's a 18-hour a day job. They barely have time to do any sleep. You wouldn't have time to raise kids. That's the idea. You just don't have time.
18-hour a day job.
Oh, yeah, they work day and night. They got almost no sleep.
To do what?
I know. That's what people always ask. What do they do in Sea Org? Well, they have people doing auditing and cramming and testing, and it's just all mindless garbage. It's nothing. But when you're in it, it all feels like it's the most important thing in the world, and it's all last second, and you got to do it now.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.